Okay, all right. I think we're about ready to start. Um, oh, wow. Um, this is uh, this is Noran Olson, analytics manager from Quota, and she comes very highly recommended from Don. I think we were talking that she was doing all the work of an analytics manager, but in the background up until about a year ago, and started teaching classes and found that that number one, she enjoyed it, and number two, she was good at it. So I think we're lucky to have her here.
Well, thank you very much for coming. I just want to give a little bit more background about myself. As Ron mentioned, I'm the analytics manager at Quota. And I've been with them for just over 3 years. My background is in accounting. Publishing is very new to me, but the analytics process is not. So every time I attend these conferences, I learn quite a bit. So today I'm going to talk about SEO keyword research, and step by step. And at the end of the presentation, I have a resource page that we've set up. It's live. I went and checked it on the Quota site that does have a copy of this slide presentation. And I would imagine there's probably one also available on the SIPA website. Okay, so I like to start out by talking about Google, because what I do with my keyword research and my analytics is really all based on Google, because our feeling is if you are successful with Google, then you will be successful with the other search engines. And so I've just thrown out a few interesting facts. When I should mention that Quota, we do quarterly intensives. They're 2.5-day training, and this presentation is one of the 14 modules that we would teach over the course of a 2.5-day program. So anyways, as I said, I've thrown out some statistics. I think one of the most interesting statistics is the one down at the bottom. What I did is I just did a simple search for the word "the" to see how many pages Google had indexed, and it was 25 billion as compared to Yahoo and Bing. Another great statistic, 6% of users click on paid search results. That means that 94% of the time organic wins. And so what I typically do is, I'm teaching for organic search, but a lot of the things that I'm going to talk about really can be applied to paid if that's what you choose to do. But my clients are primarily working organically. We seem to have something wrong with that slide. Anyway, so we're ready to start with keyword research. There's multiple steps with an SEO campaign, but the 3 steps I'm going to be working with today are researching, organizing, and benchmarking. Again, strange slide. Okay, so for the purposes of this presentation, we're going to be using a case study based around Green Gardens Network. This is a fictitious company, but it is so it is such an evolved case study. Quota uses it for our 2.5-day training. It is a multi-platform company that started out as a legacy print publication and is expanding into a digital magazine, events, tours, everything. And so if you asked Don at Quota, about Green Gardens Network, I think he really believes that this is a real company, because he could go on and on with a conversation about this. So anyway, so we're basing it on this particular legacy print publication that they write about all topics gardening. So if Green Gardens Network asked me to come in and do their keyword research, one of the first things I would do is just do a simple Google search of their space. You know, I want to, and so I've put in the phrase gardening because I want to see what's going on in the gardening space. So I'm looking at the content of some of the results that are showing up. I'm looking at keywords that are being used. I'm looking at site architecture. I'm looking, you know, is it competition? Are they potential affiliates? It's really a whole exploration of the universe. And then I would sit down and do some brainstorming with editorial, marketing, and this process is really crucial. We want to talk about, you know, this happens to be a legacy publication where they have years and years of archived articles. And there's print books. So we want to figure out what have they been writing about, what do they plan to write about, but more importantly, what's the product, what's the upsell? Because at Quota, you know, we don't do anything just for the sake of we don't do anything without a purpose, I should say. And we have this acronym ARM, attract, retain, and monetize. So everything that we're doing always has to be for a specific purpose, whether it's attracting, retaining, or monetizing. So it's really important to get the marketing people involved in this process to figure out what are we selling, what is the ultimate goal, and how are we going to monetize. So we're looking at all of the different topics that you could possibly write about, or that they have written about, or they have products to sell. And then you would organize all of these ideas. And so, you know, having sat down with all the parties involved, we came up with 159 potential topics that, you know, as I just want to reiterate, things that they have written about, products they have to sell. But of course, you know, editorial resources are limited, so they knew they couldn't be actively running SEO campaigns on 159 individual topics, so we had to cut it down to 48. And that's what they were planning to launch with. And so you can see how I've set it up right here. We'll talk about Ubers. Now, Ubers would be your highest level category, and quite often this is how you would set up the navigation on your website. And then we have the term primaries. Primaries really is just the second level, secondary level of your navigation, and it is sort of, I guess you'd call it a category page. These would typically be your category pages. So for every single one of these potential category pages, you would need to do keyword research. And so this is where the Google Keyword Planner comes in. With the Keyword Planner, you have to have a Google account. It's completely free, but you need to sign in. In the old keyword tool, you did not need to sign in, which I actually rather liked because it limited the results that came up. The new Keyword Planner, you know, it's giving me a lot of information. You can get up to 800 proximity phrases that it would recommend. So anyways, you got to sign in, and then when you sign in, you've got 4 choices. And the first one is really, you know, the one that we're most interested in for keyword research. And it's searching for new keyword and ad group ideas. Now, as you all know, this particular tool is really geared towards AdWords campaigns. And so nearly all of the functions are there to help you navigate through your AdWords campaigns, but we can definitely use this for just simple keyword research. So here you go. This is your screen where you begin the research, and you have different fields that you need to take a look at. And the first is the particular topic that you want to research. So here I've thrown in azaleas. That is one of my primaries that I'm going to build a cluster around. And you can add multiple phrases in this box as long as they're on separate lines. The next thing you want to do is think about location and language. And then, of course, you get to decide if you want to have your results broadly related or closely related. And then you have an option to include or exclude certain phrases. Now, I use all of these 5 functions on a regular basis. A lot of my clients are international. I was just working on a Portuguese watch site the other day. And so I did not choose a location, but I did specify that I wanted all my results in Portuguese. And you know, quite often you'll find that it's mostly languages that you would clarify because you know, with the internet, languages surpass geographical borders. You know, you can really, you know, there's Portuguese-speaking communities all over the world, and so it wasn't really a geographical boundary that I was interested in. It was just more of a language filter. But of course, I have done location filters, and I'll show you here. So we just launched a regional publication in Houston, and so I was able to get search volumes for the Houston metro area, so that was really handy. You can go city, country, state, county, and even by Nielsen rating. So this is actually probably one of the best features I've found with the Keyword Planner. It did not exist with the old keyword tool. You were limited to country. This has really sold me on the tool, because I was a little skeptical when they first introduced it over the summer, but this part has really sold me. Okay, your next choice, as I had mentioned before, was broadly related versus closely related. And I've shown you some results for both broad and close. So you can see on the left, if I kept, and broad is the default setting. So if you keep it on broad, when you're searching for a single phrase like azaleas, plural, your results will come out in both plural and singular. But if you select closely related, then all of your results will be in the plural form, and you'll be missing out on opportunities. However, there are certain instances where closely related really helps. And so you kind of have to play around with the tool and see what you, what type of results you're getting. I don't have a slide for it, but let me just talk about including and excluding. I love that function because, you know, if you're doing enough keyword research, you'll find that there are certain things that will pop up like buy this, for sale, used, cheap. You know, sometimes that's really just not the word set that you're looking for. So nearly all of my research, I will exclude certain phrases. All right, so this is what the results look like when you download from the Keyword Planner. It comes out in a CSV file. And so I'm going to reiterate that this tool is really meant for pay-per-click. So there's a ton of information that for keyword research, we don't need it. The only information that we really need are these 2 columns, keywords and average monthly searches. And this is exact match. And you'll see on the Keyword Planner that there is a way to choose broad match or exact match. That has nothing to do with the monthly search volume. That only relates to pay-per-click. So I delete all of the other information and just focus on those 2 columns. However, I want to point out that there is a competition number in there. Again, specifically for AdWords bidding. It has nothing to do with how competitive the phrase is as far as indexed phrases on the internet. So again, disregard it, just pull out the keyword and the average monthly searches. Okay, so we've looked at how popular is the topic, how many people are searching each month for a phrase exactly as written. Now you need to find out what the competition is. And so the simplest way to do this is to Google the phrase with quotes. I actually have some software that I use. It's a plugin that we built that I can run several hundred of these phrases at a time, but for your purposes, you might have to do it manually. So with quotation marks around the phrase, you can see that Google says that there's about 8,150 indexed pages that use that exact phrase. So I'm going to show you why quotation marks really make a difference. So with Azalea Care, in quotation marks, 8,150. If you don't put the quotation marks, then Google has 8,400,000 results. And that's because Google is indexing Azalea somewhere on the page and Care someplace else. It doesn't mean that they're next to each other. Did you have a question? I want to know the exact two-word phrase, or three-word, or five-word, or however many words you'll get. Because I want to know, I have exact search volume, I want exact Google listing. Now, I shouldn't really say the word exact, because you could come back tomorrow and Google this phrase and get a different number. And so I have a lot of people who, usually with this presentation, I do a workshop afterwards, and I have everybody doing the same process. And inevitably, somebody's going to say, oh, I'm not getting the same results. As long as you're in the same ballpark. I look at it as any phrase that has competition in the tens of thousands is pretty low competition. When you get up into the hundreds of thousands, it's more of a medium competition, and a million above, I would say, is a high competition. And so depending on what your weight class is, how prominent you are in your space depends on what phrases you might consider including as part of your SEO campaign. So we have all of the information. We've got popularity, we've got competition. Now it's time to organize. Yeah, I apologize. Something happened in translation because it looked perfect on my computer. Okay, so I start out with the spreadsheet, taking the 2 columns of information from the Google Keyword Planner, and then I just annualize the search volume. Now, I should mention that the Keyword Planner, the monthly search volume that they're giving you is based on a 12-month average. So we want to annualize it, and then I add some extra columns. So then you add in the Google listing, which again is just searching with a phrase in quotation marks. And then you want to calculate the Google KCI. That's the Keyword Competitive Index. And that, I think, is a McQuota phrase. We have all sorts of acronyms. I've tried to explain what they are. But, if you get confused, I apologize. We do have a lot of acronyms. But anyways, the Keyword Competitive Index is really just a simple calculation of supply and demand. It's how many people are searching for a particular phrase and how many index pages are there on Google. And so all of the phrases get a score. And for a KCI, higher is better. If there is less competition and a lot of search volume, then that's a phrase that might be worth targeting. Of course, you have to factor in annual searches. Sometimes you'll get a very high KCI score, but there's not enough search volume to make it worth your while. Other times you may find you have a very high KCI, but the competition is just too much for you at this point in time. So it's really a balancing issue of all three factors: search volume, competition, and then your KCI score. Okay. And this just shows, this is our grading scale that we've come up with, and it just helps people decide what phrases might be worth adding to their SEO campaign. And this is one of our favorite slides. When it comes to your campaigns, it's not always going after the big phrases. It's picking and choosing your battles appropriately. Looking for several small fights that you think you can win as opposed to just one giant battle. There you go. So we've gathered up all the information into a spreadsheet. Now it's time to benchmark. And there's my bad slide. Okay. So here we have what I'm going to call a Google visibility report. And these are just spreadsheets that should be very easy for you guys to put together. It's really important that after you've done all this research that you document it and organize it into an actionable report. And so I build these reports for my clients usually at launch or before launch to help them figure out how they want to set up their websites. But I've also have a lot of clients who have existing websites, and so I sort of build the taxonomy around what their either their current site or how they hope to evolve their site. But it's really important that you do all this research and that you have it documented, because this is a tool that the editors are going to be using on a daily basis. Now, it's very much a fluid document, because every month when I'm meeting with clients, I'm adding phrases, I'm deleting phrases, I'm updating certain pieces of the report. But during my monthly meetings with clients, we spend the first hour of our discussion going through this Google visibility report. So you can see here, we have the keyword phrases, and we have this new column called primary keyword clusters. So remember I had said azalea was a primary. It was a phrase that we were going to use in navigation. Hydrangea is also a primary. But what we're doing is we're building clusters of related phrases. So this here is showing you the hydrangea cluster. And it's really important to, especially nowadays with Hummingbird, is not to get so caught up in individual keywords, but to think about the cluster as a whole. So all of the research that we did for azaleas, we're going to do for hydrangeas and all the other 48 topics that we happen to be dealing with. So the next thing we want to do is figure out the Google position for each of these phrases. So I use a piece of software called Advanced Web Ranking. Now, I'm sure there are others, and Advanced Web Ranking does a million different things, but I only use a very small piece of it, and that is to run monthly PageRank reports. So, there's a subscription. I think I have the basic subscription, but what I do have is I have 20 dedicated proxy servers, because when I'm running this particular report, I'm running it for thousands of keywords, and my computer's on 24 hours a day because I'm running it for 20 plus clients a month. So I have the very basic subscription, but extra proxy servers. So some of the key features for this particular software, which I'm sure are the same for others. You upload the keywords. You can choose the search engine. I always choose a Google search engine, but it's not just Google. It could be Google Portuguese. It could be Google Canada, depending on whatever my client is, Google Mexico. And then you enter a URL. So, and when you set it up, it will track each phrase. It will show you whether or not the phrase shows up in the first 50 positions of Google, and it will give you the URL. So one of the bonuses is that it doesn't matter what URL you put in there. You can put your own URL, but when I have clients launching, they don't have a URL right away. So they'll go and we'll run it for the competition. And so you can find out exactly how your competition is doing on the phrases that you might be targeting. So this is what the data would look like. You do need to sort of customize the report, but you're interested in the keyword, the search engine, the exact URL that's showing up, and the position. And you can see here, Green Gardens Network, fictitious case study. So we didn't have a URL. I ran it against gardening.about.com so I could get some information. Okay, so back to the Google Visibility Report. I've added in the position, and now I want to calculate a Google Visibility Index. And this is really just a percentage that we assign to each individual phrase. And it's based on where the phrase is showing up in Google search results. So for a phrase that shows up on page 1, we're going to assign an index of 100%. That means that 100% of the people who are searching for a particular phrase, such as hydrangea tree pruning, have the opportunity to see your phrase showing up on the first page of Google. It's not a click-through rate, because a click-through rate very much depends on where on page 1 you're showing up, but this actually just happens to do with visibility. So they have the opportunity to see your results. If your phrase is on page 2 of Google search results, then we assign a 5% GVI. And that's because we all know that very few people are going on to the second page of Google, especially nowadays. 5% may even be a little generous. 5% of the people potentially will look at the second results, and then we assign 1% for page 3 results. And of course, we're tracking page 4 and 5. That would be positions 31 through 50. Because once you start getting some traction, it's actually easier to build momentum. So we want to, look at those results that are on page 4 and 5 and sort of think about how we can get them to move up in PageRank. So that's how we're assigning the Google Visibility Index. In this particular slide, we'll just show you exactly what I said about, pages and visibility percentage. So now it's time to calculate annual impressions. So annual impressions it's just a simple formula. It is annual searches multiplied by your Google Visibility Index. So if you happen to have a page 1 ranking phrase, then annual impressions will equal annual searches. If you're on page 2, then annual impressions are 5% of annual searches, and of course 1% for page 3. Okay. Next is a cluster summary report. So as I had mentioned before, we're doing all of this research for individual phrases. We're giving them all scores, but at the end, we're going to roll them up into clusters. And so this cluster report shows you that with the research, for example, azaleas, we came up with 441 individual phrases with an annual search volume of 2.7 million. And for hydrangeas, there were almost 400 phrases with 5.4 million in cumulative searches. So with this cluster summary report, it can really help you determine where you want to spend your editorial resources. You know, you may decide, you know, maybe we'll focus on hydrangeas because there's more search volume going on there. We have some traction. You can see that you have annual impressions of 64,000. So there is some visibility there. You know, you do have some page 1, 2, and 3 ranking phrases. So maybe that would be a target. And so, again, this is a report that I spend quite a bit of time with my clients on. We look at, you know, how are their clusters performing each month? Because, you know, if you're ranking well in a particular cluster, then it's usually not just a single phrase, it's groupings of phrases. And you know, Google is truly looking for, in this day and age especially, authoritative voices for particular niches. So, you know, you really have to be thinking on a broader scale nowadays than just individual phrases. Okay, and then finally we have the Uber summary, which just is, you know, rolls it up one step higher. And it shows you that after all of the keyword research that I did, we're now tracking 8,500 individual phrases with 103 million annual searches a month. And again, this actually is an important summary for overall planning. You know, what is the size of your market? And we use this particular report when we're doing business plans for clients. So, benchmarking. Every year, I will go through each of my clients' keyword lists and revise the search volume and revise the competition, the Google listings. Now, I saw a huge jump this fall when we switched from the Google Keyword Tool to the Google Keyword Planner. So if you guys have done keyword research in the past, you have a report that, you know, may or may not be similar to this. If you haven't updated your search volume recently, then I would highly suggest going and redoing all of the search volumes, because I've been seeing at a minimum a 30% increase in search volume between the keyword tool and the keyword planner. And the reason for this is that the Google Keyword Tool had search volume for just desktop and laptop. The Keyword Planner now includes mobile and tablet searches. So huge. And depending on the industry too, you may even see a higher than 30% increase. I was just doing a client, watches, and their annual search volume increased 48% because, you know, there's a lot of people, you know, it's technology, so there is a lot of search going on in mobile and tablet for really high-end luxury watches. Okay, so every year, at a minimum, doing your search volume and your Google listings. Monthly, I update the Google position for all of my clients. And so that's done, as I said, on the individual phrases. And then daily, you know, the editors, they should be checking search volume for phrases that they're going to be using, because fluctuations do happen. They're going to want to look at Google listings. They may want to do their own keyword research to see if there are other proximity phrases that are showing up that may not be in the report. And so I have my clients every month, they're submitting new phrases. You know, well, I found this, you know, these have great numbers, let's add it to the list. All right, Hummingbird. So how has it changed SEO for us? Well, the goal is really to sort of meet the demands of conversational search, which are longer phrases, much more specifically targeted searches. And so, you know, as far as keyword research, it's still imperative that you have your target phrases in your title. And we're looking at longer titles nowadays because, you know, Google is thinking more semantically, so it's not necessarily that the words are next to each other, but that there's some proximity. So, you know, a longer title will allow you to have more keyword phrases right at the top, right in the title. And that's the best way for Google to know what your content is all about. You know, if you have a very specific title, it's going to provide a lot of insight. And obviously, the content has to be in depth, it has to be relevant, it does have to have, you know, the phrases that you're targeting, but you don't necessarily have to go in and repeat the phrases over and over again. And, you know, the ultimate goal, as I say on the bottom, is to communicate your overall authority on a topic. That's why you know, it's very important to think about clusters of phrases instead of just focusing on individual phrases. And here we go. I had mentioned this to somebody yesterday that, you know, here's my new definition for SEO, subject expertise optimization. It's not, you know, trying to game the system. It's showing that, that you know what you're talking about. You have a broad body of content about your particular subject matter. And that's it, and I bet I'm early. Oh, actually, not too bad. So we have 9 minutes to either ask me questions or run out the door. Okay, yeah.
This is very helpful.
Thank you.
If you're trying to, thanks. If there are a certain cluster of keywords that you're really trying to optimize around a bigger topic, is it typically you're suggesting one article or landing page, or like a microsite that would have on that first landing page a bunch of stories with article titles that could click to ones behind it? How do you recommend it? One big one page that has lots of these things, or clustering them together with a landing page?
We would recommend having multiple articles around the same general topic. So if it was azaleas, you would want, you know, an article on pruning azaleas and all the different variations of that phrase. Then you would have one on planting azaleas. Then you would have one on different varieties of azaleas. And then you might have another post that talks about all of your other posts that, you know, oh, if you're interested in the topic of azaleas, then we have all of these other resources. And then if we were going to build, which, you know, we would build an entire campaign around azaleas, then we would have a free download, which would be the ultimate handbook for planting, pruning, and, you know, growing azaleas in your backyard. So it would be, you know, a soup to nuts, a very much, you know, multiple posts in that particular topic. And it's something that, you know, the editors would be writing about every few weeks. So they wouldn't just, you know, post it and forget about it. It's an ongoing campaign.
But on the page that would have, like, let's say you're trying to capture their emails by having them download that guide or white paper. Would you, on that same page, have links to all those other azalea
articles?
Absolutely.
There's always, you know, related articles. There's always, you know, in every Maquota post, you would have a dozen ways of, you know, first converting. You know, there's all the different conversion architecture that we would bury into that to capture an email, but we would also be having text links, related article links, tag pages down the bottom. So it's all very much interconnected.
Thank you.
Okay. Anybody else?
Well, no, thank you very much,
right.
Noran.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
it.